I'm Brandon Ward. I'm the principal at Bath Middle School, and I was one of the initial team members who completed the RREV pilot along with Micah and a couple of other folks. And I'm Micah Depper, and I'm a science teacher and instructional coach at Bath Middle School, and was part of that initiating team with Brandon. I think the impact after the first year was seen mostly with teaching, and that was through Micah's role as the instructional coach. It perhaps wasn't as visible, but I think it was an undercurrent for a lot of the really great work that's happened this year. The second year, through our micro award process that we kind of developed, is when we started to see the really big things, like the play this morning, the ropes course going on now, the recess area renovation, all things that look very visible, but wouldn't have been possible not only without the RREV funding, but also without the work that Micah was doing behind the scenes last year in his first year in the role.
The impact I see, I feel like expeditions are really what it always kind of comes back down to for me. And this is, as we've talked about in that teacher panel, it's not new to BMS, but this RREV opportunity allowed us to hit the reset button and create a culture with a whole new staff. Because when we first were in Yale School 15 years ago, quarter or fewer of our current teachers were around when that training happened. So most of the school doesn't really have institutional memory of being in Yale School, or they're aware of it but didn't really know how to do it in practice or do it to a high level of quality. But the impact of expeditions is known. I mean, when they're done right, kids are in it. They need to know. They want to do the next thing. You don't have to ask them to do it. They take leadership roles. They learn all these soft skills of dealing with people and talking to community members and presenting their learning and organizing their learning. And so to see that get distributed throughout the building and to feel kids be excited about it, and to not just feel their excitement, but to see it in survey data that says they're more engaged when they're doing this type of learning, and to see teachers become excited about it, that's huge. Money doesn't make sustainable change. Buying things doesn't make sustainable change. You got to change the culture. And the Acadia teachers spoke at length about that, about you can feel the culture in the room. This is just what they do. But not everybody's the same as that. You know, obviously they're one of our most enthusiastic, all bought in teams. But one of the ways we went, how can we get everyone closer to that, is through asking everybody to share and deprivatize their teaching. So we used 7 of our monthly faculty meetings this year, our professional development time, for a structure called collaborative learning groups. It comes out of the School Reform Initiative and the National School Reform Faculty, and the idea is that you mix teachers together and you structure their work around a problem. So the problem is, how do we understand what our students are learning and not learning, and how can we do it better? And the method is bring student work from your classroom and have a protocol-based discussion together. And what's neat about this protocol is it doesn't give you any room to hide, because if you're the presenter, you're not allowed to talk till the very end. So you put the student work out, copies of it to everybody at your table, and then you just sit and listen while people look at the work, ask questions about the work, form hypotheses about what's going on for the different learners. And then finally at the end, the teacher gets to go, whoa, you know, I didn't think of any of these things that you guys suggested, or like, yeah, you got that right on here about this kid. I think this is what's going on there. And at the end of it, once they've kind of processed it, they talk about what are the implications we can take home and apply to our own classroom. I can't tell you how many conversations I sat in where somebody went, I never thought I'm an ELA teacher, but I want to take that graphic organizer from science because I love the way you did this, and so forth. So
Yeah.
keeping that cross-pollination going in a way that doesn't require an instructional coach there, because if we keep this faculty structure around, structure, spaces for connection, right? This is a structure that promotes collaboration and the exchange of ideas. So it's planned for next year.
I think one of the real positive surprises for me was I expected with Micah being able to lead much of the work that there would be a strong base once again of knowledge around what learning expeditions look like. I've been surprised by how fast they accelerated from year one to where some of our teams have gotten to this year. It's been pretty impressive. I didn't expect it to happen that quickly for some of the folks. And then what Michael was just saying about teachers started to see the success that they and their students were having, and success just breeds success and excitement. When I think of the one particular team that you guys already met with earlier today, I think as soon as that group started to see like, oh wait, this is really cool, there was an aha moment for all of them as well, and buy-in achieved. And now they tend to look at a lot of their work through that learning expedition lens, which has been really cool to see.
To drill in on the last year PD a little bit, just to give some detail to that was focused on a set of teaching practices that are embedded within expeditionary learning called student engaged assessment. So it's a set of 8 different practices that when they work together are meant to increase student ownership of their learning. And so they're things like teachers clearly communicating learning targets. Most of the time the kid goes into a classroom and they have no idea what they're supposed to get out of that session. So making sure every single day you say this is exactly what we're doing and why we're doing it and how you'll know you've been successful at the end. Checking for understanding, formative assessment, making sure you're inside kids' heads before they get to the test on the 3rd week and show they didn't get it at all. Using models, feedback protocols, critique. And so those are like a lot of the in-class practices, and then there are these other practices which are more structural, student-led conferences. So traditional parent-teacher conference, kid may or may not be there. If they are there, they're just sitting there awkwardly while 2 people talk about what they are and aren't doing right. So we have a history of doing student-led conferences once a year. At least that happened before the pandemic. And then that got kind of displaced. And so we brought that back and said all conferences now are student-led. And so they spend significant time preparing portfolio work to share to families, talking about their glows and their grows. And and we've surveyed families on their experience of that, and overwhelmingly it's been very positive. They've indicated that they had a clearer idea of what their students are learning and felt more connected to the school. So that's back to our problem statement of improving the connection for all members of our community. That includes parents, grandparents, etc., whoever you bring to your conference. And then a couple of the other structures are passages. It's comes from the idea of a rite of passage. So moving on from middle school to high school, and in EL schools that are high schools, they do it as part of their graduation, is a kind of a summative presentation to say, this is why I'm ready to move on. Let me show you the evidence of how I've grown over a longer period of time. Let me show you a resume I have for a job and a future career I thought about and all sort of stuff. We, again, pre-grant, inconsistently implemented that. Post-grant, it's happening throughout the school consistently.
I don't want to sound like I'm trying to pass the buck at all, but this could not have happened without someone like Micah in his role being able to lead a lot of the work. The day-to-day as an administrator is just so hectic that I don't think without the support of Micah and then our assistant superintendent as well, who's aware of everything that we were doing, it couldn't have happened because I don't have the capacity to do it. It's important that I'm involved both for accountability purposes and, as a leader of a building, you do set the tone for what happens in the building and what's important to you, your staff, and your students. But the bulk of the day-to-day work, it would have been impossible for me to be the one leading all of it because there isn't enough time in the day. So you need a strong team that's committed and willing to put in time and energy alongside you. And I've been very fortunate that Micah has been a partner throughout this entire process.
And I love that dynamic between us too, because we bring two perspectives to the same problem, you know, and most of the time I think we see things very similarly, but Brandon has the high view of what's possible and what all the dynamics are, you know, within the school, within our finance department, you know, within interfacing with our facilities department that, you know, kind of reports to him as a building leader. And, you know, sometimes I fly a little bit off the course with some ideas and realize, you know, maybe I got out above my skis or something. And so we're able to sort of work together and find a path forward that is possible, but also, you know, it's just been a good partnership.
It has, and again, without a strong operating team, it wouldn't be. And like I said, it's good that we've had two different approaches to it. He's definitely a bigger ideas guy than I am, but there's also no way for him to have that view across building, district, what else may be going on that's going to have an impact here. And the communication between us has always been excellent, which has been helpful. I mean, I think originally, I don't know if we were scheduling weekly or bi-weekly meetings, and we were able to move off of that and just meet kind of as needed, but it's always been as quick as an email, when do you have time to touch base today?
Well, buy-in is important. Change is politics. So it doesn't matter how good your idea is, whether or not it's supported by all this research or a network that says, hey, this is a good approach. If people don't believe in it, they're just not going to hop on board and do what you're asking them to. So if you want to lead a project like this, you really have to be willing to put in the time to develop trusting relationships and be willing to hear what people's ideas are and compromise and figure out what the value proposition is for people. So yeah, that's been a huge part of the role, is realizing you can't just cram a good idea down people's throats. You know, they need to see it and see why it works. And so that's completely how it worked with that team we talked earlier today. They became their own biggest cheerleaders because they experienced success and then they went, how do we get more of that?
Cool.
I would love to see all of the work that has been started has continued, like specifically the learning expeditions and how our students have worked to make learning visible to the community. I would like to see that go even further. I mean, one of the areas that I feel like we could still improve is how we display student learning around the building. You know, we have some small display cases in our main lobby. There's an opportunity around the building for all students to be showing off work that they're proud of. So a better format or structure for how we display and celebrate student work would be great to see. I think continuing to find ways for, I can't remember exactly how Micah termed it, but deprivatizing learning. And so across the building, teachers are just in and out of classrooms sharing what they're doing, what their kids are working on, the instructional techniques that they're using, having those professional conversations where you walk into a building and you can see that this is a team of folks who care about what they're doing and they care about who they're doing it with, and it's just all support all around. I feel like we're really building towards that, and my hope would be that 5 years from now, if I were to walk back into the building, whoever next comes into this role has really continued to push that forward.
You know, what I would like to see is really what I like to hear. You know, when you walk into a building, when I first started here 5 years ago, I was like, cool, EL school, can't wait, let's do it. And there were teachers who went, yeah, we love it, it's great. And other teachers who went, it's another thing to do. When am I possibly going to teach my X, Y, or Z? How do I check this box off? You know, those types of comments. And so we have less and less of that. And I would hope that in 5 years, all it is that sort of like, what's possible? How can we do it? And excited conversations. Yeah. And I've been in a school that feels that way before. The school that a student taught in was an EL school where it truly felt like 100%. So I know it exists. And I think we're on our way towards that.
I think the last 2 years, we have done more good in this building than my previous 7 years combined. And when I think about moving on, it helps knowing like this school is in a great place with great staff and other great people who can help continue the work that's been started. And it just feels good knowing that I'll be walking away for something great for myself, leaving behind a thing that can be great for everyone else. And yeah, that just is a really nice thing to feel and think about.
For me, this has been a very big full circle moment. When I was doing my teacher training, I went to a pretty progressive, alternative, maybe even teacher training program that was very much like, what if we reimagine what schooling looked like? And that was the whole vibe there. And so I left my teaching program with all of these ideas of how to reform schools for the better. But I always thought I was going to do that from within public schools. And then I got a job offer to start to help be a founder of a public charter school. And I went, okay, I didn't think I would go in that direction, but it's still publicly funded and every kid doesn't learn the same way. This would be a really cool chance to innovate and put all these ideas in practice. So I went to that school and I put 6 years into that project. And there were some really amazing things about it. It was so nimble, so dynamic, so small, and there were always problems. We were always meeting up at the end of every day and going, whew, okay, what do we do different tomorrow? So that sense of like problem solving is not only possible, it's like a necessary tool. We're always responding to the situation. We never had enough resources to really fully enact the vision. And it was extremely challenging for a number of reasons. And I ended up going, I want to go to a place that feels a little more stable than this. And so I ended up here at Bath Middle School going, wait, we're EL. Okay, so this is a chance for the best of both worlds. And what's come out of this REV experience is it's renewed my faith that traditional public schools can be reformed to meet the needs of every learner. I think the charter school proposition is, there are some students whose needs can never be met in this school. So what would it be like to create a specialized environment that's going to do a specific thing to meet those kids' needs? And I do think there's a role for that still, but I think that role becomes less and less the more we look towards our traditional public schools and say, there's so much more that we could do in this space. We could be doing things in a much more innovative way. So this project is just totally renewed my faith that that's true.